Hello and welcome. I'm Suma Katauka and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. A bipartisan delegation of U.S. lawmakers arrive in Copenhagen to meet the leaders of Denmark and Greenland. This comes amidst pressure from U.S. President Donald Trump, who sees attaining the island as a key part of U.S. national security. Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney and Chinese President Xi Jinping are adding to the list of measures to slash tariffs, including a landmark deal for Canadian visitors to enter China visa-free. This is the first meeting between the two leaders in 8 years. The UN Security Council holds emergency talks as Iran accuses the US of fueling unrest in Russia, warns against foreign interference. Meanwhile, Western powers threaten sanctions. Iranian dissidents warn of mass killings, and the White House says 800 executions are planned. Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado presents her Global Peace Prize medal to U.S. President Donald Trump at the White House. A U.S. official confirms Trump will keep the medal, which he praised as a sign of mutual respect. China says Israel resolutely opposes a U.S.-Taiwan deal, cutting tariffs and boosting Taiwan's investment in America. Beijing urges Washington to follow the One China policy as it claims Taiwan as its own territory. South Korea's impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol is sentenced to 5 years in prison for abuse of power, obstructing justice, and falsifying documents. The court says his 2024 martial law move caused a national political crisis and he showed no remorse. Israeli forces kill at least 10 Palestinians and wound several in attacks across Gaza. The violence follows the U.S. announcement of a second phase of the ceasefire deal. Russian President Vladimir Putin discusses the situation in Iran in separate calls with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian. Putin has said that Moscow is willing to mediate in the region. Now for this hour, we start with Russia and Iran. Russian President Vladimir Putin has engaged in diplomatic talks with both Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian regarding the ongoing situation in Iran. Russia has offered to mediate peace in the region, positioning itself as a stabilizing force amidst the tensions. Additionally, Russia has been strengthening its ties with Iran, having signed a long-term strategic partnership agreement while also offering support to the country in terms of de-escalating tensions. However, concerns remain regarding Iran's nuclear ambitions, with Western nations accusing Iran of covertly pursuing nuclear weapons, an accusation that Tehran denies. While Russia supports Iran's peaceful use of nuclear energy, Russia's involvement in Iran's peace efforts highlights its broader geopolitical strategy, especially in the context of its ongoing conflict in Ukraine and its increasingly complex relations with its Middle Eastern allies. Now for this discussion, we welcome Ms. Alison Mutler. She's a former AP Bureau Chief in Romania, joins us live from Bucharest. Thank you very much, Ms. Mutler, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking at this, how do you analyze Russia's role? Does it, as it shows or tries to show like a mediating effort, does it actually make any difference? Where does Russia exactly stand?
Well, Russia wants to show that it is making a difference. Whether it does or not is unclear, but Putin has a desire to play a bigger role on the international stage, and he has for some time been interested in Middle Eastern affairs, starting with Syria back, I think, in 2015. So this is another chapter for Putin where he thinks he can play an important role because of the crackdown on protests in recent weeks and the large number of deaths. So thousands of people have been killed. And Putin wants to show that he's a peacemaker, that he is an international figure, and he has an important role to play on the world stage. This comes as he he's actually an international pariah, particularly in Europe and in other parts, because of what has happened in the killings in in Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But he is trying to show himself as a peacemaker and even a statesman. And importantly for him, his area of influence extends beyond just Russia and Ukraine. For him, this is showing the Middle East, which has historically been a very problematic area. And obviously, Iran is an ally, and so he's showing that he is the person who can calm the situation. Whether that happens or not, it's unclear. But that is what he is trying to show by these phone calls with the Iranian president and also the Israeli president today.
Right. And how is Russia's relationship with Israel?
I would say it's quite difficult because Israel
Yes.
bombed Iran,
Yes.
and also Russia openly supports Palestine
Yes.
or Gaza, and so I think it's quite difficult. But again, Putin wants to show he's beyond just alliances on the ground, and wants to show, because also Netanyahu doesn't want Trump to intervene militarily in Iran, so he's trying to find common ground with Israel. But it is a difficult relationship that Russia does have with Israel, and it's not a natural relationship. In fact, they're often they're hostile to each other with much of their foreign policy.
Right. And like you rightfully mentioned, they have so many disagreements, let's say. They don't agree on many things, right? So how do you think, what's the mutual benefit for Israel in engaging in Russia's efforts to mediate?
I think they have a shared interest in Iran, in that Netanyahu does not want America to intervene, and Russia says it doesn't want the situation to escalate. So even though they have disagreements, as you said, on many levels and on many topics, on many files, as they call them, if they can find one area where they will agree, they both have an interest to negotiate or to discuss these issues, particularly as Israel also wants to repair its very badly damaged image abroad, something that Russia also wants to do. So I think they found shared common ground on this particular issue, and they're both trying to exploit it.
Right. That's interesting. Thank you for highlighting that. And Ms. Butler, so how will Russia balance its strategic partnership with Iran while addressing concerns over, a lot of concerns, especially now with ongoing with the U.S. and Israel?
I think that Russia will try to position itself as well as it possibly can. And Putin, the Kremlin is good at this kind of thing. Not that it will be able to repair its image, but it will try and position itself in a place of strength, to show that it is strong and that it is important, and more than that it's relevant, because it's come under a lot of criticism for its invasion of Ukraine, which hasn't been successful on a military level, and is causing all kinds of problems around the world, in Europe, and not only in Europe, to the United States and other places as well. So I think Russia will try and position itself, which is to Russia's advantage, not necessarily to creating peace, but to show that it is trying to bring peace.
Thank you very much, Ms. Butler, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving the focus on to Venezuela. According to multiple media reports, CIA Director John Ratcliffe reportedly met with Venezuela's interim president, Delcy Rodriguez, in Caracas yesterday. While the White House has not commented yet, the meeting was said to be at the direction of U.S. President Donald Trump, who wants improved relations with Venezuela following major political upheaval in the country. Topics reportedly discussed included intelligence cooperation, economic stability, and ensuring Venezuela is no longer a safe haven for America's adversaries, especially narco-traffickers. Rodriguez, who was vice president under Nicolas Maduro and later became interim president after Maduro's ouster, has criticized the Trump administration over Maduro's capture, but is seen by Washington as a stabilizing leader. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Ms. Alison Mutler. She joins us live from Bucharest. Thank you very much, Ms. Mutler, for staying with us. Now looking at this, how do you think, how does America or U.S. President and this administration sees current leader Rodriguez?
Well, I think from day number one or day number two after Maduro was captured, I think the US sees Delcy Rodriguez. Of course, she made some statements saying this was an illegal kidnapping, etc., etc. But I remember Rubio, State Department State Secretary, saying that, oh, this is just these are just statements. Let's see what happens next. And she's generally believed to be somebody they can rely on, somebody also who brings some stability because she's not in opposition to Maduro. She was his deputy. Apparently she was involved in talks in trying to get him voluntarily to leave power, which didn't happen in the end. In the end, the US captured him. But I think she's seen by the US as a figure of stability, but also a transitional leader, at least by the US, an interim president, somebody who can guide Venezuela through to elections. I don't know when they'll be held, they haven't been announced. But the fact that the CIA director is reported to have visited Venezuela, and I would believe this to be true, shows that she is their key person of contact there.
Do you think, well, we can only speculate here, but why do you think there were no, like a foreign minister or et cetera, but why CIA director? Why CIA director in particular who's gone to Venezuela at this timing?
Well, it is very interesting. I think it's because the CIA, it's for sharing key intelligence. Things that are perhaps classified secrets, the fact that it wasn't even reported. If you have a foreign minister visiting another country, you normally will get advance warning as a journalist, and it will be reported publicly. But often when I think the CIA director goes abroad, it isn't reported. But I think it shows the level of strategic interest. There'll be sharing of military secrets, sharing of intelligence. The US is very concerned about narco-terrorism. So it'll be sharing a lot of things which are classified that they're not destined for public consumption. So that's why I think that the CIA director went there, and specifically Rubio did not go there. That is because it's to share highly classified information and intelligence with Rodriguez about obviously what happened, but particularly about what the situation is now and what the US wants from Venezuela in the future.
Right. And although US has not commented on this yet, how do you think this CIA meeting of Rodriguez with CIA could change or affect domestic politics in Venezuela, if it can in any way?
Well, I think the fact the CIA director went to visit the interim president, Delcy Rodriguez, is a sign that the US trusts. Which is this, and it's a sign that she also trusts the US, because if she hadn't, she wouldn't have received him. So I think that it is a sign for the Venezuelan population that since the removal of Maduro, the Venezuela is definitely going to have a strong US input in both in the economy, in terms of the oil, but also in politics. I don't know how free the Venezuelan society is, and when elections will be held, there might be anti-American sentiment, but because it is not a democratic society, there haven't been protests in Venezuela against the capture of Maduro, and the fact that Maduro is he's out of the country, but the country is being led by his deputy, shows there's a sort of continuity. And then we have this added layer of the US. But it's hard to say, because Venezuela isn't a democracy. Of course, there'll be some anti-American sentiment there, but that's not being openly expressed at the moment. But I think the visit shows that there will be a strong working US-Venezuelan relationship, and not necessarily by choice, but the fact that the US did intervene militarily. Venezuela, feels that for its own stability, that it needs to cooperate with the United States.
Thank you very much, Ms. Butler, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving on to Copenhagen and US, a bipartisan group of US lawmakers will be meeting with leaders from Denmark and Greenland to assure them of continued congressional support. despite President Donald Trump's repeated threats to seize Greenland. Trump has highlighted the island's strategic location and mineral resources as key reasons for U.S. interest, suggesting the potential use of force. This has raised concerns in Denmark and Greenland, prompting European countries to send military personnel to the island. The delegation, led by Democratic Senator Chris Coons, will meet Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen and Greenlandic leader Jens Frederik Nielsen. Senator Coons has emphasized the need for stronger ties with allies, especially amidst international instability. New Hampshire Senator John Shaheen, a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, has criticized Trump's rhetoric, warning it undermines NATO and plays into adversaries' hands, including Russia and China. Despite these tensions, she has expressed confidence that rational decisions would prevail, highlighting strong bipartisan support for NATO and U.S.-Danish relations. The congressional visit follows a White House meeting this week where Danish and Greenlandic foreign ministers met with U.S. officials. Though no change in stance on Greenland was achieved, Danish officials have voiced their commitment to Arctic security cooperation, but emphasized respect for Greenland's territorial integrity. Lawmakers, including members from Trump's own party, have voiced opposition to the idea of seizing the Greenland. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Ms. Alison Mutler. She joins us from Bucharest. Thank you very much, Ms. Mutler, for staying with us. Now, as so many things happen, U.S.'s stance hasn't changed on Greenland, but can we be hopeful that a U.S. stance might change, or what's your analysis of this current situation?
Well, I think that the statements made by the United States President Trump were made by him. There was no consultation with Congress, and I think Congress members, it's a bipartisan group. That means there's members of that delegation are from the Republican Party and from the Democratic Party. Have travelled particularly to Denmark to show some a more conciliatory stance. They want to show their support. They say, I think they're probably saying privately that whatever Trump says behind the scenes, nothing has been decided, and this is just bellicose, warlike rhetoric. And I think they're trying to calm the situation, and they're also trying to point out that his statements over Greenland actually help NATO's adversaries, namely China and Russia. So I think that it's a sort of not exactly a peacemaking mission, but it's designed to soothe tensions and to soothe the nerves, and also to say once again that what Donald Trump says. Again, he didn't say he would do the military action. He said he did rule it out. So they're trying to soothe nerves to say, look, we're in America. We know Donald Trump. We know the way he operates, and he won't stage a military invasion. But it's also designed to show support for US's and US's partners, Denmark, and obviously Greenland, which over which Denmark has security and foreign policy control. So I think it's a sort of peacemaking mission in the sense that it's allies it's a reassuring mission. They're trying to reassure Denmark that however bad what Trump says sounds like, it won't come to pass.
Thank you for highlighting that and staying with us and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move on to Africa. A senior Ugandan opposition figure, Muvanga Kivubi, has claimed that security forces killed 10 members of his campaign team when they stormed his home in central Uganda on Thursday during elections. Kivumbi, a member of parliament for the National Unity Platform, has said the killings occurred after his supporters gathered at his home post-voting. His wife, Zahara Nampevo, said that security forces fired through a garage door where 10 campaign agents had been hiding. Authorities offered a different version, accusing Kivumbi's team of planning to attack local police. Kivumbi confirmed the deaths through a local hospital, as the government imposed an internet blackout during the elections. He expressed anxiety fearing further attacks as security forces redeployed around their home. Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Anuga Olugbengapol. He's a public affairs analyst, joins us live from Lagos. Thank you very much, Mr. Paul, for joining us once again. Good to see you.
Thank you for having me on the show, Asma.
Thank you. Now, looking at this, what's the real situation? You know, both of these, Muvanga Kivumbi claims something else, and the police in Uganda are saying something else. So, what are we to make of this?
Well, of course, you don't expect the police to agree with the opposition leader because their job basically is to protect the government in power, and the government in power has been there for 40 years. People are tired, and the government wants to continue perpetuating itself, even though because the opposition have refused to unite under one aegis to be able to get a better showing in the election. Because as much as we might claim that, oh, government rigged the election, but we may also look at it critically and say the opposition lacked the war chest to be able to prosecute the election properly. But at the level of regional leaders for the House of Parliament, they are equivalent of the National Assembly, there are places where no matter how much the opposition, the government in power tries, no matter how big the war chest of the government in power is, the opposition will always take the day. And these are areas that are usually specially highlighted for violence in order to discourage people from voting for that opposition figure who might like it, and also from reducing their ability to be able to contest the election result. And I think that is what happened in this case, and it is not to be unexpected. Whilst we can only rely on the words of government against that parliamentarian, but from experience, this is nothing short of, a threat to silence opposition, and that has been carried out. I'm sure that whatever resolve the supporters of the opposition figure have would have evaporated with the death of those 10 members of the campaign team, as everybody will say, he who fights another day will live to fight another day. But the government in Uganda as a whole is doing whatever it takes to make the election result look as legitimate as possible and to gag opposition as much as possible so that they won't have a situation, because the incident in Venezuela is making a lot of them to be on the head, especially somebody like Mr. Benny, who is always, the first to respond to Donald Trump or to talk back, even though we know that most of the talks are just what it is, talks without any strength to back it up. But I'm sure he wants everything to look as legitimate as possible, so that a country like US under Donald Trump does not have any probable cause to invade his country or say they want to kidnap him, because he didn't allow the opposition figure that won to carry the day. And I think that is the reason why this violence have been taking place across parts of the nation. And it was said that the army went back to, take away dead bodies, so that once there is nobody, there is no evidence.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Mr. Ayanaga Olugbengapoel for joining us from Lagos and sharing that insight. Thank you very much. Now we move the focus on to Yemen. Yemeni Presidential Leadership Council head Rashad Al-Alimi has appointed Foreign Minister Shaya Mohsin Zindani as the country's new Prime Minister. This comes as the Presidential Leadership Council had accepted the resignation of Salim Salah bin Spraik and his government. The resignation was preceded by a sharp escalation in the country's southern and eastern regions. Although the previous cabinet will continue to perform its duties until a new one is formed. A new government faces the immediate task of defeating the coup and stabilizing a collapsed economy plagued by food insecurity. Now we move on to Japan. Japan is the latest country to investigate Elon Musk's artificial intelligence service, Grok. The government has requested immediate improvements from X Corporation after inappropriate images were generated by the service. Meanwhile, Japan's Economic Security Minister Kimi Onoda has said that legal measures could be considered if the situation does not improve. However, X Corporation has implemented changes to prevent the creation of inappropriate images of people. The company has also restricted users from generating such content where it is not allowed. The investigation follows similar actions by Britain and Canada. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.